Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to Geeks Watch. Today, I want to talk about The Incredibles, an image of which you will see here. I'm going to tell you right now, I am going to have major spoilers for the film. Partly because there's a few things that I really want to talk about my feelings about the film, and partly because I'm a huge fanboy. I'm gonna fanboy out on this. Having said that, the overall plot line of the film. It starts out like 15 years in the past or so, back and forth between like an interview with some of the superheroes of the day, Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, Frozone, and cutting to some scenes with Mr. Incredible fighting crime. He's saving a cat from getting a cat stuck in a tree, stopping some burglars, stopping a bank robber, saving someone's jumping off a building committing suicide, and saving a derailing train. He is interrupted in this process by an obsessive fanboy who wants to be a sidekick, who he tells to go home, buddy. And he also manages to see Elastigirl and Frozone in his meanderings of the city and fighting crime. And at the end of this little sequence, we learn a couple of things. One, Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl are getting married, and their secret identities, which is Robert and Helen. And because of the events portrayed in the crime fighting sequence, Mr. Incredible is being sued for damages by the man whose suicide he prevented and the people who sustained some injuries in that saving process, and from the people whose train he saved because they also sustained injuries. Because of that, superheroes are forced to go underground. Their secret identity will become their only identity, and being a superhero is banned. Fast forward to quote unquote present day. Robert Parr and Helen are the parents of 3 children. Helen is basically a stay-at-home housewife. Robert works for an insurance company in a soul-crushing cubicle job, like so many of us are aware of. Because he gets frustrated with his boss and throws him through several walls, he is fired, and he does not tell his wife, Helen. He is a distant father and husband, kind of regret, soul-crushing job, missing the glory days. He is offered an opportunity to take up superhero work under the table, in secret, and he is paid handsomely for it. Being able to do superhero work kind of reinvigorates him. He and his wife become, closer. He pays more attention to his children. But it turns out that this undercover superhero work is a villain who is trying to basically get rid of a bunch of superheroes and then become a superhero himself. It is Buddy, the sidekick he rejected, has become a supervillain designing super weapons. He's designed a robot that he has basically tested out on other superheroes, and until it kills them, he redesigns it, making it better and better until finally he gets to Mr. Incredible, which is the one he was hoping to do in the first place. Helen winds up trying to come to his rescue. Their superpowered kids stow away. Buddy is now Syndrome, captures the whole family, sends his robot to attack a major city so he can save the day by controlling the robot. Loses control of said robot. The other superheroes show up, defeat the robot. Syndrome tries to take Helen and Robert's baby, who is left at the sitters, as revenge. They defeat Syndrome, save the day. There's a lot more going on in there, but that's the general overall arcing plot of the story. For background stuff on making of the film, Brad Bird wrote and directed this film. Brad Bird was actually the first non-Pixar, non-in-house director that Pixar had. They'd been working completely in-house, but Brad Bird knew John Lasseter from college, and this is not Brad Bird's first film. His first film was Iron Giant, but that was a financial flop in the box office. In spite of it being, become a beloved film today. But after the flop, Warner Brothers didn't want to work with him, so we kind of pitched the idea of The Incredibles to, someone else he knew in the industry, John Lasseter. Agreed to take him on. All kinds of behind-the-scenes stuff. This was one of the most technically complex computer animated films of its day. Brad Bird had more experience with 2D animation than 3D computer graphics, so they brought in a whole new team of animators. This film has all the worst things that computer animators hate doing. It had smoke, it had fire, it had water, it had clothing, it had hair, it had wet clothing and hair. They basically had to invent new software to make this thing work right. Violet's hair, she had long, straight black hair. It took them 6 months to get her hair right. Literally. So this is a labor of love. Little tidbit I found about researching this. Miyazaki actually came to Pixar Studios and saw some of the reels of the film, and Brad Bird basically, asked Miyazaki, he said, "Is this film any good, or is this just more American trash?" And Miyazaki, through his translator, said, "I think this is a good thing that you were trying to do for American film." So this got Miyazaki's stamp of approval when it was still in production. The voice actors for Robert Parr, damn, I just had his name, Craig Nelson, and the voice actor for Helen, Holly Hunter. Neither one of them had done voice work before. When Holly Hunter was approached, she was curious. Like, I have never done this before. I think it would be fun to do. And Craig Nelson pretty much did the same thing after he saw the movie, The Iron Giant, Brad Bird's initial film, and was interested after seeing that film in doing voiceover work. Other little tidbits here and there. This was one of I think, the fourth highest grossing film when it was released, 2004. It received almost universal critical acclaim. And back to the technological aspect of it, they did so well with Elastigirl's stretchy superpowers that Marvel had to go back and redo some of the scenes in the Fantastic Four film with Mr. Fantastic, with his, because what they did with Helen was way better than what Marvel was doing with Mr. Fantastic. So it actually, it was so good in quality that Marvel had to go back and redo some of their elastic powers footage. Let me see. The villain Syndrome was not supposed to be the main villain of the film, but it worked better than the other villain that they had. Can't remember his name. The physical features of the villain Syndrome are based on Brad Bird himself. If you'd seen pictures of Brad Bird side by side with Syndrome, you would see that, yep, except for the fact that Syndrome has this huge shock of hair, which looks like he'd been stuck his finger in a light socket. The face is almost the same. So that's kind of funny. Brad Bird actually voices one of the characters in the film, Edna Mode, who designs superhero costumes. For the voice actor that plays their 10-year-old son Dash, whose power is super speed, they made the voice actor like run around the building 4 times to make him sound out of breath, to give him his voice that, that winded, breathy sound. As far as that goes, one of the things I wanted to, I love this. This is one of my favorite Pixar films of all time, and for multiple reasons. But I wanted to talk about the fact that this film is only masquerading at a kid's film. This is an adult film masquerading at a children's film. And that sounds wrong, saying it's adult film hiding in a children's film. This is more of a grown-up film, a film for grown-ups, than it is a children's film. They make allowances for it being for children. Any violence is fairly sanitized. There were some scenes that they had changed There were supposed to be a couple on-screen deaths that they removed. One because they felt it didn't fit the story, and one, it was a little too dark. So they kind of softened the film a little bit because they knew it would be marketed towards children. But if you look at the themes and a lot of the stuff that happens in the film, this is not really a kid's film, in spite of it being marketed as such. Look at Helen. I mean, in the early parts of the film, look at Helen and Robert's relationship. Their marriage is on the rocks. Rob Parr is basically going through a midlife crisis. He is in a soul-crushing cubicle job. None of these things are things that kids will relate to. These are, grown-up oriented. I keep wanting to say adult. These are grown-up oriented themes, and they are handled really, really well with a lot of nuance. You look at Rob Parr's boss when he's working for InsurAcare, who is his petty, malicious mid-level manager, who, his only concern is increasing corporate profits and market share, cares nothing for their clients, willfully puts as many roadblocks in the way of their clients trying to make claims, berates Rob Parr for actually helping his clients file their claims properly to get their claims paid. He enjoys enforcing whatever authority he can over other people as much as humanly possible. He is a little man with an overinflated ego who enjoys crushing those beneath him. And while his persona is exaggerated, he is actually a very, very short person, and all his horrible qualities are kind of overinflated and over the top. He is someone who is, if you spent any time working in the corporate world, you know what Robert Parr is going through. All these little indignities that we are forced to suffer and endure just to maintain our paycheck. So many people out there, so many working level people out there understand what this is like. These are not things that children would relate to or understand, really. Even, Robert and Helen being distant, Robert being, an inattentive parent, an inattentive husband, because of this soul-crushing job and the fact that his natural inclination is to help people, and he's being forced not to through, the superhero act. He wasn't being a hero for the glory. He genuinely has a desire to help people, and yet he was told to not do that. He couldn't be a superhero. He couldn't help people anymore being a superhero. He works as in an insurance company, is being told not to pay people who are hurt and injured, and told to deny their claims. Although his manager, am I supposed to tell people to not help people? And his manager, through gritted teeth, says, the law requires I say no. All these little things, and it's subtly done so well and so believable. Kids might understand that maybe dad's not paying attention to them, that maybe mommy and daddy are fighting, but they don't, in such a short period of time, they establish this dynamic in a realistic way that resonates with me as a parent, as a working man, as a father, as a husband. I can, not that, I can't say I was never distant with my children. I don't know. I wasn't, I wasn't them. But I could have, I know I could have paid more attention to them. I could have been a bit more attentive husband and father. But they do such a good job of encapsulating and describing and explaining this with such subtlety and detail in such a small amount of time. It's really, really well done. Then again, there's the fact that when Robert Parr becomes reinvigorated by doing undercover superhero work, he starts paying attention to his kids. He also starts, there are subtle hints that Robert and Helen are having more intimate relations in the background. There's a scene where you see Helen kind of like jerk like this, and you see Robert's hand coming away with his fingers in a pinching position, hinting that he may have pinched her butt. And there's a scene later when Robert does the same reaction, that Helen may have also pinched his butt. And there are scenes where the two of them are rushing through the house to get away from the kids. There's a scene where Helen is dragging her husband back in the house, and seeing him, there is hints that Robert and Helen are getting busy. It's not something that kids would pick up on, but it's there. there was a scene where Mr. Incredible is meeting with Syndrome's second in command, a very sultry woman named Mirage. There was a scene where they're bantering back and forth over a dinner table, and she has a glass of champagne, and she is, idly rubbing her finger over the edge of the champagne glass while she is talking with him. She is subtly flirting with him, and like, again, not things kids would pick up on. The other thing I want to mention too is that this that's subtle, but this is an animated film. Someone had to draw that. Someone had to animate that. These things aren't accidental. These things are deliberate choices by the animators. There is the fact that people die in this film. Again, I mentioned that they pulled some of that back, but Mr. Incredible comes across the corpse of one of his old superhero buddies that Syndrome has killed on his island. And when Robert breaks back into the facility of Syndrome's facility and gets into the computer, finds out how many of his old superhero buddies have been killed by this robot that Syndrome has been designing. And it's sanitized, but how many over a dozen superheroes have been killed by Syndrome. Again, this is supposed to be a kid's movie. And Syndrome has murdered a dozen superheroes. Another scene at the end of the when Helen comes to not rescue, but like confront Bob about his undercover superhero work, and the kids are on the plane. Syndrome launches a missile at that plane to blow it up with the kids on board, knowing the kids are on board. He is trying to kill children, Robert's children, while Robert is restrained and unable to fight back, captured. He basically casually threatens to kill Robert's children. Again, this movie has been marketed towards kids. They managed to survive the crash, but Robert doesn't know that. He thinks his whole family has just been murdered. And you see the family get, Helen and the two kids get to the island. They manage to swim to the island safely. And Helen tells the kids, these people will not use restraint because you're children. They will kill you if they can. Do not let them. Again, this is a kid's movie. But something that hit me personally, that hit me emotionally very hard, was at the end of the film when Syndrome has sent the robot to attack the city, and he's lost control of it, and it's wreaking havoc. And Robert tells the family to stay hidden. He will go and fight the robot by himself. And Helen is like confronting him. Is this some midlife macho crisis thing? He's like, no. And he can't explain it why he wants them to stay behind until finally he breaks down and says, I'm not strong enough. I can't lose you again. I'm not strong enough. And that is such a powerful emotional beat that, as a father of children, hit me very hard. If I had lost my children, I don't know how it would shatter me. The fact that that Robert admits this, that the thought of losing his family again isn't something he thinks he can endure. And kids wouldn't get this. There's so much subtlety and emotion and detail that there is a grown-up movie, a normal, not necessarily a superhero movie. This is a movie about family dynamics and about someone coming to grips with his midlife crisis. And this is basically an adult movie, a grown-up movie that has kid elements thrown in it. It's not a kids movie yet marketed towards kids. And I think that's one of the reasons that I love this movie so much. So many kids movies are saccharine and softened and removed from reality, because they think that kids won't like it, kids won't understand. And like I said, I think there's a lot in this film that would kind of pass over a lot of kids' heads, that they wouldn't get it at all. But it was done so well, and in a way that still made it entertaining and funny. The beats that hit the hardest are really, really well done, and it's not done in a way that kids would tune out of. Um, I think that's an amazing thing for the creators of the film, both Brad Bird as a writer and director. He nailed this so well, to make it a movie for the family to enjoy, but in ways that there's so much non-children oriented content in here that the kids that it actually dominates most of the film. There's really only a handful of moments that are generally just thrown in there just for the kids, and even those that are moments that adults could take that could enjoy as well. I I have fanboyed about this thing for, holy crap, 20 minutes. This is longer than most of my videos. Anyway, I love this film, and I could go on about this for another 20 minutes if you let me. But I have I have things to do. I'm recording this during my lunch hour instead of eating my lunch. So, as always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.